Tyson burned through a ton of money. He bought stuff, and I was reading an interview with him recently about, which was crazy to me. When he went to prison, he didn't originally he was supposed to do 50 years in prison. That was the maximum sentence because he was in there for rape, 50 years, or aggravated rape, and then it got knocked down to like 9 years. And then he went to prison, and he was a troublemaker. He's getting into trouble. He said they added a year to his sentence.
I'm sure he was.
Yeah, because he was he was young too.
And people were fucking with him.
We don't, at this point in our life, it was so long ago that we only think about Mike Tyson now. Do you remember? Do you really, when you think?
Oh no, I think I
you remember.
I followed him very devotely. I was a devoted fan.
Right, but if I say Mike Tyson, do you think of Mike Tyson when he was 20, or do you think of Mike Tyson now?
For me personally,
yeah.
I think of him when he was 20 because of the impact that he had on my life at the time. I was, and I don't know his exact age, but it's roughly the same as mine.
He's 50s. He's 50s, early 50s, probably.
Fair enough. Without going into details, he is roughly.
I can Google it.
He's right. Well, I don't want to know specifically. Okay. We don't need to narrow down that. But he's 50s.
Okay.
And I was just so impressed with what he was doing with his life compared to what I was doing with mine at the time. I was like, man, this guy. Oh, yeah. And he was, when he was in his prime, when he was at his best, he was beyond unbeatable. He was beating guys within 10 seconds of the fights starting. Again and again. Like,
you're right.
Not chumps.
Right.
These weren't guys like, he was just, because people might remember that he got to a point where he was just fighting guys to just fight, and he needed money or whatever. But when he was young, he was coming up, and they were terrified of him. When he was walking to the ring, you could see the fear in the other fighters' face. They were scared to death. And
because he wanted to kill him.
He went out to the middle of the ring, and he was the knockouts were so. It wasn't just that he was knocking these guys out.
They were violent.
They were violent knockouts where they would be like flipped over the ring, and they would like stagger around and bounce up against the ropes, and you could tell they had no control of their bodies from one punch.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. You don't see that very often these days.
No.
But we'll circle back to something that is interesting with this whole Tyson thing. But I'll finish the story. He got added a year to his sentence. So then he starts, I guess, sleeping with a counselor in the prison. Right?
He married her.
No, he married her. But he had kids in prison. He loved prison. After being there for like a year, he loved it. He wanted to leave. He was doing great. He's like, dude, I had a relationship. I had a kid in prison. I had friends. I was running that shit. But he got a year knocked off on good behavior because he was banging the counselor. Then he left, and he didn't know what to really do. But he's like, I was supposed to be there 50 years. And he ended up doing like 6 years or something. It was significantly less.
I think it was 3.
Maybe 3. It was significantly less time for what he's at. And then he did. Remember Tyson got fat. He got fat. He was like 240 pounds.
When he first got out, he was fighting almost right away. He fought Peter McNeely.
He did.
He fought Peter McNeely.
Yeah, but in the early 2000s, he got pretty heavy. He was not in shape. And then he turned around. Now he's 50-something.
He's fighting
in crazy shape.
He's also, he's like invested in some marijuana company.
Oh, yeah. No, he got an entry-level marijuana. He got a huge farm of that. He's doing great. But it was funny because his stories are wild. It's about tigers, like how he even came to own tigers is crazy.
Yeah, no, everything about his life.
Everything was crazy.
They basically found him when he was a kid.
Yeah.
The fighting world discovered him.
Right.
And I've seen videos of when he used to fight as a, what do they call that? Golden Gloves or
right. Yeah, that'd be like the amateur.
He was coming up as an amateur fighter, and how emotional he used to get before his fights, even though he was gonna go out and win.
Oh yeah.
But he was still very concerned with letting down his trainer, the guy that had brought him and rescued him out of the life that he was in. He was headed to prison.
Yeah.
Because he was beating everybody.
He was saying that where he grew up, I think he was from Boston, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He's from Not the Bronx. He's from
York?
part of Queens.
Yeah.
But like a really
He was
nasty
telling a
part
story
of New York City.
He was telling a story on either his podcast or Rogan's where you had two choices in his life, in his young life. You either go the route of the gangs or you die. Those were his only options.
Right.
He's like, you're either in or you're not.
Right.
And no one really made the other choice. When you're that young, it's the only thing you've got. You didn't make it out.
Well, he was pulled out of that life by a man named Customato,
Right.
who was a boxing trainer who was very old at the time that he got to Tyson. I believe that he was in either his 70s or 80s when he came across Mike Tyson. And he became a father figure to Mike Tyson.
Right.
And then he was trained by, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's still a guy who's on ESPN all the time talking about boxing. He was Mike Tyson's trainer. And Customato was his father. He raised him like he was his father. And when he died, it was within 2 fights.
Yeah, he died November 4th, 1985.
Right. And when he died, that's when Mike Tyson's life. He was the only person that Mike Tyson would listen to. And after that, he wasn't going to listen to anybody. And he didn't. He just, they couldn't get him to, he didn't need to train. He could beat these guys anyway. Right. So he didn't. And then what happened when he lost to Buster Douglas? I watched that fight live. He was expected to go out there and wallop. Buster Douglas was a chump. At that point, and I don't know how we got into this. Man, we go on some crazy shit. But I love Mike Tyson so much, and I followed his life so closely that I wanted to know as much about him as I could. And he, Don King, got a hold of him. Don King got a hold of him after Customato died.
Yeah.
And Don King stole a lot of money from Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike Tyson ultimately got mad, but he dangled a lot of money in front of him. I can get you. He's like, I'm going to get you $100 million to fight 3 guys in a limo. And Mike Tyson was like, and everybody else was like, no, man, you got to train. You got to do this. He's like, I'm going to give you 3 easy winnable fights. You're going to win these fights easy. You're going to make $100 million for 3 fights. And these other guys are like, no, don't listen to him, And he's
you gotta
like,
be the champ.
Right.
It's all about the champ.
Right. But
like,
he's like, this guy's giving me easy fights. I don't have to work for $100 million. These guys are going to give me fights. I got to fight the best and work the hardest.
So I want to transition into this argument because I did a video about a week ago, and I was thinking about it because boxing currently, I would say, not much hype around boxing. It's not exciting to watch.
Very little.
It's not what it used to be. When you're talking about boxing used to be it. You'd get a couple fights a year, and you'd get super excited to watch them. Sure. Now, boxing no one really watches it. The pay-per-views are lacking.
Unless it's a celebrity fight.
Right. Unless it is some ridiculous fight like we're having now. And I feel like that these fights are taking a lot away from boxing as a sport. Like I feel that way because you got Floyd Mayweather, arguably one of the best boxers of our time or generation,
maybe
going
ever.
in there, maybe ever. Maybe ever.
Argument can be made.
Yeah, I mean he's a great technician in the ring, going in there and he's fighting people who have no right even look. You would never in a billion years, 20 years ago, would anyone off of any platform be like, I'm going to go in there and fight the best guy with 0 fights under my belt. Like I'm just going to go fight him for a crazy amount of money.
But let's look at the times that we live in compared to when you're talking about 20 years ago. I believe that we are the perfect example of this. I am a nobody. I do this. I show up here. I come by your place. I put your address into my phone. I drive over here. Because I want what we do to reach as many human ears as possible. And should that occur, ultimately, if people are tuned into what we're doing and are interested in what we're saying, how we're presenting it, find a fascination either comedically or material-wise in what we're doing, then ultimately we will develop a following.
And
Right.
at that point, we will have some power and influence and maybe able to make a difference in the world in some way, or possibly generate some income or whatever.
I understand
But
where,
what I'm
you're
saying
going.
is, you've got people out there that are way beyond where we are, that recognize that early on. I recognized it years ago. I tried to tell people I owned a company where we produced internet content, but nobody believed what I was saying. I told them, I was like, guys, this is the future. Ultimately, TV is going to disappear. It's going to be all online. My son doesn't watch TV. I ask him all the time, well, what's your favorite show? He's like, I don't watch shows. It's like, nobody watches shows. He's like, I don't know anybody that watches shows. You know, when they brag on
Right.
Fox News all the time about their ratings.
Yeah, the ratings are terrible.
They're like, our ratings are, we're the number one. And I'm like, you're the number one on nobody's watching. You're the best of what it doesn't even exist.
You got 2 million viewers. Congratulations.
Right.
Joe Rogan did a podcast with 600 million views in 20 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So and I saw it. I didn't have the knowledge to create to put this together. I've searched for this for years. That's why I appreciate it so much.
Well, I understand where you're going with this.
So
At
these
what
guys
point
now are in a different. We're living in a different world.
we are living in a different world, but at what point, let's say we do this podcast, become successful, everyone loves it, gets millions of viewers every week. At what point does that make it okay for Marshall Holmes to tweet Floyd Mayweather to go?
Well, I'll just say, if we get to that point, and it would never be, I would never be guided by the money that it would draw. I don't care about money. I like attention.
I don't know that the
love
Paul brothers
attention,
care about the money.
But I don't think they do. I think that they love, there's a circus atmosphere to that.
Oh,
Now,
it's all circus.
I was never at the, even when I was traveling doing stand up on the road, I was never a guy who achieved a high level of fame. But I was definitely around a lot of guys that did. I opened for a lot of high end stand up comics that were very special books, and at the time were famous. Not to reel off a list like look who I
Right.
knew. All the guys from the Redneck Comedy Tour, whatever those
Blue collar.
blue
comedy tour.
collar. I opened for every single one of those guys as they were coming up. The puppet guy, the guy who does the puppets,
Dunham.
Jeff Dunham. I opened for him, and a handful of guys that became famous later. I see Billy Gardell on TV all day.
Right.
It's hilarious to me to see him in that fucking Ozempic commercial, whatever the fuck
Right.
he is. He's in that commercial. Dude, I knew him when he was a dope smoking hippie. And I watch him he does like an exercise, and that dude hasn't done an exercise in his whole fucking life. And he wouldn't know me from Jack. Because
Right.
I opened for him in a club in the middle of nowhere where he was on the rise. He was about to sign his contract
Right.
to be on the show, that Mike and Molly show. In fact, everyone was like, he's about to be on Mike and Molly. And I was like, Mike and Molly, what the fuck is that? And then boom,
There
Mike
it
and
is.
Molly.
Yeah.
So, we live in a world now where that celebrity can be created, and not just me, you. I mean, look, they're gonna be like, oh, who is this guy? And
Right.
if you have things that you want to achieve outside of this room, and somebody challenges you to a fight, or they challenge you to whatever, and somebody dangles money in front of you,
I just think it takes away from boxing. That's all. I think it takes away from the nostalgia of boxing and being a champ. And because like I said, you all know that I am a avid UFC fan,
Right.
and Bellator
Right.
and MMA. And with those guys, to be the champ, you're a bad motherfucker. Like
Right.
hands down.
Sure.
You're a bad dude.
Right.
And 0% chance Dana White is gonna let any single person walk into that octagon against any champ that is not a ranked UFC fighter. 0% chance it will ever happen, ever.
Okay, but let's be
But then you
honest,
go into
what he
boxing.
does. You got to look at, man, that dude manipulates the living fuck out of those people's lives.
Nah, Dana White doesn't.
Oh man, he makes all the money, he pays them peanut.
Well, that's a different situation. That's not. I wouldn't say that's manipulation. I would say that's a product of how fast the UFC grew, and now also keep in mind how much money they lost for decades in the UFC. They didn't make any money, $0. It ran a deficit for a long time, and so then you get to a point now where okay, they're putting on these events and they're making good money at the gates and all this stuff. I don't know what it costs to put on an event. I'm sure it's a fuck ton of money. And the fighters are making significantly less in comparison to boxing. Almost exclusively to boxing.
Now, versus a pay-per-view, yes. But if you're a
Yeah,
dude,
right.
you're a dude just fighting,
We're talking Tyson Fury paycheck versus Francis Ngannou paycheck. $15 million difference.
right? But and I understand, but man, look, all of this
But
is about money. It's
Now,
all about money. It's all about money.
But it shouldn't
the
be.
ideas that you and I have that we were raised on when we were younger, and I'm even more so me, less you, because I know I'm older than you are. But I'm just saying, like, that stuff is gone.
You know what?
The aura of being the champ,
I don't
the
think
aura
so.
of working your way up.
I disagree.
Dude, it's all about cashing in now.
I
It's
disagree.
all about. You can see it. What
You
do you
can't
mean?
see
We
it,
just,
no.
You just
I
watched
bet you
it.
this.
These guys, that guy Paul, whatever.
Yeah, but
he
they're
got
not-
the fight
but they're
made
not
with. How
fighters.
much did they make?
a lot. They made a lot.
Exactly.
But they are not in the sport of boxing anymore. Floyd Mayweather is not
That's
a competitive
where it's
boxer.
going, bro.
Nah.
That's where it's going.
I bet right now, if you were to contact right now, if you were to call Francis Ngannou, UFC heavyweight champ, all he's ever want to do is be the champ. Right now,
Okay.
follow me. If you call him up right now on the phone and say, Francis, I have a fight. I have a boxing match. You're going to fight Tyson Fury. Right? He is the champ. The whatever boxing champ he is a part of. I don't follow all the WB, whatever they are. There's
No
too
one
many.
does.
No one does. You're going to fight Tyson Fury. It's not for any title. It's just a boxing match. In order to do so, you can no longer fight in the UFC. You have to put down the belt and walk away. But we're going to pay you $50 million to go have an exhibition with Tyson Fury. You get no champ. You are no longer the UFC. You've been the champ. You still are the champ. You've been one. But it's not on the line. I guarantee you Francis turns it down.
Okay, well, I don't know who the dude is. I don't have any doubt.
Francis Ngannou has a
I don't
story
know.
that you would love.
I'm sure. No, look, I'm not knocking him. I don't know him. I follow sports. I follow what's going on in the world. I don't know who the dude is. I would say this: if he turns that money down, he's a fool.
Nah, he's not a fool.
And because
You know why he would turn
here's
it down?
why, and here's why. And I don't even say this as an admirer of money. I look at Conor McGregor and what he did. Conor McGregor had no business being in a ring with Mayweather.
No.
Mayweather carried him and could have knocked him out in the first round at the end of the fight. I don't think he could have knocked out this big dude that he just fought. I think he did his best against that guy.
Right.
And it was a wake-up call for him. I think at the end of that fight, he was like, I might not want to take on guys that are 50 pounds heavier than me and 20 pounds lighter than me anymore, because one of these guys is going to pop me and fucking knock me out.
Right.
And I think he realized that. You could see it in his post-conference. But when he fought Conor McGregor, that was no challenge to him. He was younger. Conor McGregor was not a boxer. Was not in his class. Was not in his category.
McGregor is definitely a boxer, but not the same.
$300 million from that fight, bro.
Oh no, he made a crazy amount of money.
$300
They all
million.
made a crazy amount.
And so what I'm saying is, if you're that guy that you're mentioning, I understand that you've come up. And as a guy right now who's all of a sudden finding himself needing to support a family,
Also,
your mindset completely changes from, I'm going to be this guy with integrity. I'm going to come up. I'm going to do this. Look, let me tell you something right now. Somebody walks through that door right now while we're sitting here and says to us, guys, we're going to do a children's show. We're going to dress you up as two clowns. You're going to put makeup on. You're going to put a clown outfit on. And the whole show is going to be the two of you juggling back and forth balls. And you're going to defeat elves. And it's a children's show called the Free as Fun Children's Show. We're going to pay you $100 million to make the show. We're making the show.
no, we're not making the show.
We're making the show.
No.
We're making the show, dude.
Marshall's for sale. If you're watching this and you have a children's idea,
I have a 3-month-old baby that is now a part of my life. I'm making the show. We're
Let
making
me tell you why. Let me tell you why Francis would turn it down. If you don't know Francis Ngannou, he's from Cameroon.
know.
He's from Cameroon. He grew up as a kid in salt mines. Okay, he was pretty much as close to a slave as you get in modern times.
Yeah.
He's not that old. He's 34 years old or 33 years old right now, right? So he saved up what little money he had, and he made it from Cameroon to France. He went there on his own. He had a bike, walked, made it there. He got a bus.
Right.
He had nothing. He knew nothing about anything. He saw boxing on a TV in a window of a gym. Said, I would like to learn this.
Okay.
Goes in there, he wants to train to be a boxer.
Right.
Sees Mike Tyson. He's inspired. Francis Ngannou is a big fucking motherfucker. Right. He's a scary dude. So they teach him how to box. They put him in some fights. And then he said, you know what, you'd be pretty good at MMA. He starts fighting in MMA. He makes his way somehow into the UFC after like 2 years. From the start of training, makes his way into the UFC. Demolishes people in the UFC. He's got like 2 losses. He lost to Stipe and he lost to, I think Derek Lewis beat him in a decision.
What's he making a fight?
Probably around $500,000 a fight right now. Okay? Now, he came from nothing.
Right.
He achieved UFC championship heavyweight gold.
Okay. He's got the title right now.
He's got the title. He is the current champ. He's defended it no times. He's beat Stipe. He's the champ.
Won it.
He just won it. Beat Stipe. His first defense will be in August.
His next fight will make him how much?
Probably around $500,000.
Okay.
Right. So it's not crazy money. Now, on the flip side of that, John Jones goes from light heavyweight to heavyweight. He gives up the light heavyweight title. Says, I want to fight Francis Ngannou for the title. I want to fight Francis Ngannou. John Jones, arguably the GOAT, wants to beat the scariest man that you could ever face inside of that octagon.
Right.
Hands down. Right? So that's the fight to make. Francis says, I want to fight John Jones. Okay. John Jones says, I want to fight. I want to get paid $10 million. And Dana White says, Francis Ngannou, you're going to fight Derek Lewis. Because we're not paying John Jones $10 million. Because John Jones doesn't get paid $10 million. Because John Jones doesn't set the term. But John Jones says, well, look at what these guys make in boxing. And he goes, but we're not boxing. You want to go do that? Go do that. You want to go be a part of the circus? Go be a part of the circus. You want to be UFC heavyweight champ? You come fight for me and you fight and you get paid what you get paid. Now, is it enough money? It's probably not enough money. But when you're talking about somebody who's fighting for far more than just, I mean, look, Francis Ngannou has arguably made life-changing money for his life, for most people's lives, right? In his UFC career, he's probably netted, a few $1 million in fight purses and endorsements and everything else. It's not chump change. It's not $100 million McGregor money. But now keep in mind, when McGregor fought Mayweather, McGregor was on a decline. He was not UFC champ. He had lost 2 fights in a row.
Right.
He didn't have a fight.
I don't know.
So it's a good money grab.
I don't know how he was able to put that thing together.
Twitter.
To be honest with you, right?
That's
What I'm saying is, look.
It's impressive.
This is what I'll say. You got a window, man. You got a window in your life. Sometimes people, most people who live and go through this world have no window.
Right.
But you have an opportunity in life. And I was very blessed when I raised my son, because my son was raised by his mother. Majority of the time he's been alive. She had money. She had a stable job. She had a place to raise him. I never had to worry about him eating. I never had to worry about him being taken care of, because she was on it all the way through. And I have a lot of regrets about that. I have a lot of regrets about the impact that I had on his life. And that has a lot to do with what's going on in my current situation. But what I'm saying is, you, as a professional athlete, whether it's boxing, whether it's the NBA, whether it's, you have a window of time where your skills are going to make you money.
Right.
No matter who you are. This guy came from the salt mines especially. Bro, you're one fight away from being a nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody goes in the ring and knocks it away. Nobody's paying you $50 million for a fight.
Right.
Somebody walks through the door and tells you they're going to give you $50 million for a fight. It ain't about you anymore. You can't make that decision based on your pride. I remember, if you ever saw the movie Pulp Fiction, the
the guy in the movie is talking to Bruce Willis before the big fight. Bruce Willis is about to get a payoff for taking a dive in the big fight because they're all going to bet on the guy fighting Bruce Willis, and they're talking to him, and they're like, and the guy looks at him and he goes, "There's going to come a moment, and now you're agreeing to take that dive. There's going to come a moment in that fight where you're going to want to step up, and you're going to not want to do what I'm telling you to do for all this money that I'm going to give you." And that's going to be pride fucking with you. And you can't let pride fuck with you. And that's a guy taking it out. Dude, you can go out in that boxing. You can get that $50 million. You can go out and win that fight. You're not getting $50 million to go take a dive. You're getting $50 million to go out and win. And I would say this, $50 million isn't just going to change your life. It's going to change the life of your child. It's going to change the life of your grandchild. It's going to change the life of his grandchild. It's going to affect generations of your family. They're going to be looking at you, whether they recognize you as the champ on the wall of some Hall of Fame that doesn't fucking matter. There's going to be a kid that hasn't even been born 200 fucking years from now that's going to look up on the wall and see a picture of his grandfather and say, because of what your grandfather did, you're never going to go hungry. You're going to learn whatever you are able to learn, and you're going to achieve whatever you're capable of achieving because of the sacrifice that your grandfather made, which was, I'm going to fight this $50 million fight instead of this $500,000 fight. And that's why I'm saying, man, as much as I don't like money and I want to see it completely removed from the earth as an incentive to do anything, we live in reality. And the reality is right now, I got a 3-month-old baby who's 3 weeks from being around me, and suddenly the $1,000 that I thought was going to carry me through the next few weeks of my life means nothing. And all of a sudden I got to pick up every shift I can and put as much money aside because that baby's going to need a place to stay. That baby's going to need diapers. That baby's going to need food. That baby's going to need everything.
Right.
And I'm saying you got to put that in your mind when you're coming, even if you're from the salt mines. You know, I get it, man. Dude, that guy learned hard. I love those stories.
Oh, it's a wild
I'll
story.
read about him. I'll find out
wild.
about the guy because I think that's impressive.
Yeah,
but
no,
man,
it's wild.
you gotta do in the world we live in. Now, if we can create a different world, if through what we do, we create a world that's better, where there's a different standard of who's successful and who's not. I'd love to see it. I would love for morality to be where our heroes come from.